Hi, welcome to the recording for week 8 in VBNet programming. And you can see that week 8 is September 30th to October 4th. I know this is like an awful lot of work, but remember the programming components are optional. So if those that want to work through those, you may work through those. So we're going to go through, of course, this is a recording so you can do your write-up. And then we're going to discuss sections A, section B, and then finally section C in this unit. Now the one thing, please remember, on October 21st, you must turn in an assignment. So you could do one of the write-ups, you could do one of the quizzes, or an older piece of work, but you must submit some work on that date. Let's go ahead and close that. And here's the reminder for October 1st. This was the announcement that went out to all Insight courses. And this is the main count day. This counts you as a student in Insight, so you need to turn in work today or on October 1st. But obviously you should be turning work in all the time, right? But certainly on October 1st you need to get work turned in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move down to the Delegates and Events unit. And the Delegates and Events unit, this just talks about different types of processes in programming. And as always, we want to go to the Class Connect write-up. And write-up to start off, section A is going to ask us these questions, but we want to obviously go back to what delegates are. This is the intro screen. So in previous unit we learned about exceptions. And then this one, now we're going, and you could do user defined exceptions. In this one we're going to look at delegates and events. So events and programs that trigger something else to happen. So in this unit we're going to understand what a delegate is, how to use it, define an event and the usage of that, and comprehend threads in programming. You can see all the assignments. Remember, in my courses, always go to the gradebook. That gives you the most up-to-date information on work that's due and all of those things you need to know. Now here's some working definitions, so you can go through this little interactive and learn about what events are, what delegates are. So make sure you do that before you jump into going in and doing the actual work. So let's go back to the write-up before we jump into section A. So section A, in VB programming, what can you do with a delegate? What are the two types of delegates? What are multicast delegates capable of doing? So section A. So one of the new features of .NET language is the ability to use delegates. With a delegate, what you can do is you can construct a variable that refers to a procedure. So what that means is you make a variable that then refers to something else. Like it almost points to something else to have it done. So with a delegate, you can construct a variable that refers to a procedure. That's what it does. So we're going to look at how delegates work in coding. So we're going to define a delegate, explain and declare a delegate, explain how to call different functions using a delegate. So if you look at this, the delegate is the function calculate, and it can do multiple things. So we're using one signature, one delegate, to do more than one thing. So a delegate function is an interface to transfer an action from one object to another. And what a delegate does is it links the trigger to an action or event. So if you have a Windows program and you're going to hit the button calculate, it can do add, subtract, or multiply. So here's an example of a delegate. So in a phone call, you go through a series of menus, right? So you push 1 for this, push 2 for that, push 3 for that. I've all been frustrated by that type of situation. So after entering a number, the system forwards you call to a specific phone number that might help you. And after you speak to that person, you request to speak to another person, and all of those different commands, we use delegates to perform those commands. Of course, this talks about having a real person do it, but you can have delegates that can do that too in programming. Now in delegates there are two types. There's a single cast delegate and multicast. So those are the two types of delegates. And by default, all delegates are single, meaning that they call just one method or call one action to happen, but then you can make it multicast. So again, there are two types, single cast and a multicast delegate. And this you can just listen to this and it will talk about what delegates are. When you declare a delegate, you have to know three things: the return type, the identifier, and the parameters. And you see that the return type specifies the type of data that needs to be returned, whether it's going to be a string, which is text, or a number, different things like that, type of specific type of number. Identifier is the name given to identify the delegate, and finally the parameters are the variables that are used in the function that the delegate calls. So you declare those three things as you do a delegate. And let's take a look at the write-up, see what their question is. Okay, what a multicast? We've answered these two already. Okay. Multicast delegates capable of doing. So declaring a delegate, this is all the language, so you can see that this is declaring a delegate, and then it's going to give values as a string. So it wants a string, meaning text. So you can walk through this. You can see this delegate right here, this procedure, and this one's going to print the word hi on the screen, because we know that console write line means to write on the screen, don't we? And procedure 2 is going to write the word hello. So those are just the way the language is when you're doing the programming, if you're going to write these types of delegates in. This talks more about delegates. So they're executed using the delegate class, placed in the section, the namespace called system. As you've done before, you've watched these tutorials, so go ahead and click on that tutorial, you hit start, and you can read through that tutorial, or listen to that tutorial, or you can read through the tutorial here, talk a lot more about delegates. There's an assignment on delegates, and we're skipping the programming assignments, remember? Now here's a normal function. It's called the call function that you would use with delegates. So you go down through here, and it talks about what the object is, what the function is, so how they're naming those. And those of you that are really into the programming, then you can work through this. There's some notes about the program and how you can process the codes using the function call. And here's a better example. This is obviously using a Windows tool in Visual Basic Programming rather than a console item that we've been looking at quite a bit. But you can see that this is all set up that you have the choice to do two different actions. So this whole calculator, this could be called your delegate essentially, and then this calculator delegate would no matter which numbers you put in here, it would do these two activities. So it uses kind of a redirect depending on what you declare, on which of the items you declare. More about delegate functions. So again, that's the programming. That would be similar to the one that we just looked at. So those of you that are doing the programming part, the previous screen might help you with that. Multicast delegates. Well, multicast delegates, they're capable of pointing the multiple functions of the same signature. Let me see what that class connect write-up, the specific language of that question was. What are multicast delegates capable of doing? Yes, they're capable of pointing the pointing, this should say pointing to the multiple functions of the same signature. So that's what multicast functions are capable of doing. So they can do two things at once, essentially. They give you two options. Here's a little practice activity. More on drag and drop on delegates. You always see these tutorials or little quizzes. And we're not doing the discussions. Then finally, delegates programming. And those of you who do the programming, go in here to look at the assignment. If you're not doing the programming part, then you can skip through that. So that's the delegates part. Now we're getting into section B. In section B, we're going to talk about events. So we'll go up to the Class Connect write-up. And events are things that happen. So if you look at section B, in program, what is an event? What does an event involve? And give two types of events. That's what we want to take a look at here. So an event is something that happens, like a party, a football game, etc., right? But what we want to talk about is an event in programming. So an event in programming involves an action of some kind. And there are user events or program events. So an event is something that happens in a program, and there are two types. There are user events and then program events. So user events are ones that happen when the user does something. Program events are things that are triggered by the programming language, by the coding of the program. So in this section, we're going to define events, explain the importance of events, declare an event, and raise it. It's like if you're going to a friend's house, you have the doorbell, right? And you press the doorbell. That pressing of the doorbell, that pushing of that button triggers an event, triggers an action. So that's a good analogy for what an event is. So same thing with a computer, right? If you're a user, you push a button, then it causes the computer to do something. This talks like an online form that you have. So as you complete the form, you must submit the information. So you hit a button that says submit, and that submit button, that is the event. And then when you push that event, then something inside the computer tells the computer what to do. So this is the way that you would declare an event. So event is the key term, the word that you'd use for that. Then EVT is what is the coding that Visual Basic understands as you're calling an event something. So this is calling an event by the word name. So event name, parameter. So you can see event is the key word, event name is the name of the event, and parameter are the values of what is going to make that event, or what that event is going to do. So that's what event name is. Or that's what the parameter is, I'm sorry. It just tells the program what to do. Here's an example of an event. So if you look at that, this is pretty simple. Printing a value of adding two integers. So you can see down here in submain, which are the parts of the program, parts of the coding, and it's going to add the numbers 4 and the 3, then it's going to read the console line, then it's going to write the console line. And here's the event down here, so print this, and it's going to print x plus y. So you can see how they can use the event language to cause an event to happen. And you can read about some notes of the program, especially those of you that are doing the programming part. That might be helpful for you. Little drag and drop about events, you can do that. Event practice quiz. This might be a nice challenge for those that are doing the programming part. See if you can write that program using events. We looked at how to write these programs without events, just using if-then, but you can try it with the events. Okay, the events quiz. I have all the quiz previews posted over here for you, and then you have the events quiz to do. Okay, section C. And as always, before we get into the new section, we want to take a look at the write-up and just to reiterate, these two answers to section B, they were right on that first screen of section B. Okay, section C, in programming, what is a thread? Why does it seem that multi-threads run all at the same time? What does the term multi-threading mean? What are the three stages in using threads? So we'll go down here. And in programming, one operation or executable task that requires user input is called a thread. So in a single program, when you do something, that is a thread. That doesn't want to click for some reason. So we're going to understand thread and multi-thread, create a new thread, suspend the thread, explain the thread life cycle, and resume a thread. So a single process can have separate executable tasks called a thread. So that's really what a thread is. So a single process that has multiple tasks is a thread. So just like in discussions, online discussions, a threaded discussion that has multiple threads, multiple parts to it, and there are multiple threads in a program, and the computer tries to execute all the threads at one time. And technically they run at the same time, but it happens so fast it seems like they run at the same time, but really they happen one after the other. So of course this is what a thread is, and the reason they seem like they run at the same time is because they happen so fast in a computer. And one analogy would be like starting a car. You have lots of things you're doing. You're turning the key, you're having your foot on the brake at the same time, you're looking in your rearview mirror possibly. So you're doing different things at once, even though it might seem like all you're doing is turning on the key. Or when you do turn on the key, what does that happen? It sends power through the battery to the starter, and those things, it seems like they all happen at the same time, but they really don't happen at the same time. In multi-threading, and this talks about right here, like when you're driving your car, your parents are driving, and you see an animal run across the road, you do multi-threads. You honk your horn, you hit the brake, you turn the steering wheel, so you do all those things at the same time, right? So that's sort of like threading, doing multiple threads. But again, regular threading, the steps go one at a time. But sometimes you have to do them all at once, like out here you're doing all these things at once. Well, that's called multi-threading. So multi-threading is when you have multiple actions that need to happen at the same time. Multiple actions need to happen at the same time. That's multiple threading. That's also called parallel execution, and parallel means running together, right? Like parallel railroad tracks, they run together. So that's what multi-threading is all about. So as you go through this talks about system threading, and you can see down here with this little the graphic here, how it talks about different threads and how things can run all at the same time. So multi-threading is an important concept, and again, because we might want to execute multiple modules in a program at the same time. So you can see different modules here that you want to run at the same time. You can suspend modules. So you would suspend a module and then make another module run. So there are all types of decisions that need to be made in threading. So a benefit of threading is you can make applications use more than one thread at a time. And managing multi-threads can make a program be much more efficient. So here's a little tutorial about the three stages in threading. So you can see you have to create the thread, suspend the thread, resume the thread. And that's called the thread life cycle, just like we learned about product life cycle and programming life cycle. There's threading life cycle. So here's a programming example, so you can hit start to go through that, or you can read the script. So learn a little bit more about threading by going through that. So creating a thread. So before you look at how to create a thread, let's kind of think about what a thread might look like. So early in the course we talked about preparing to leave for school, right? Getting dressed, brushing your teeth, cooking your food, and all that. So each task we perform in order. But we could also possibly perform some of those at the same time using a thread. Like we can have toast cooking at the same time that we are cooking our egg or something like that. So that's how threading works. And you use the system threading, and when you do that, you use the thread class. So those of you that are doing the programming part of the class, and you want to take a look at the coding that you use. So you can see how the thread class works. So you're going to declare my thread is going to be a thread, and of course thread is a key term. So first you need to declare the thread, and then you start putting on the action that you're going to do with the thread and what you want it to do. So here's a threading program. You can see that this is a pretty basic one. It prints the letter A and B 5 times. So it's going to declare integer I from 0 to 5, so it's going to count, and then it's going to write the letter A, and it's going to go down here, and it's going to count and write the letter B, and it goes through the thread down here, and that's going to make it do these two things 5 times. So the thread, and it's going to do them at the same time, so it's using multiple threads. There's some notes about the program that talk about the two methods that it had execute essentially at the same time. Here's a program to add two numbers. You can do that's what we've done before. You can write it using threads if you're going to do the programming part. Now, suspending a thread, this is when you stop a thread that has begun. So you might suspend a thread to make something else happen, then you would resume that thread. So you can see suspending it. So this is to create and suspend. So right here we created just like we did earlier, and then here's where you would suspend the thread. And then resume the thread. So again, if you suspend it, meaning stop it, then you would resume the thread if you want it to go again. So you could stop one action, then have another action happen, then restart that original action. And this talks about threading life cycle. So it's going to print a list of letters. So go through this, similar to the one that we saw a couple of screens ago. You can see the different things that it does as it goes through it. So of course it's declaring I for integer 0 to 12, so that's doing a count, and we've seen those before. And then it's going to start doing the writing the letter A, then write the letter B a number of times. So you can see how that thread's going to work. So once you know what the output's going to be, then it makes it much easier to read through and see how the threading works. And here are a few notes about the program. So again, those of you that are doing the programming part, that can be really helpful to you, good resources. Here's a program to suspend a process, so you can take a look at that for the programmers out there. Thread review activity like you've done before. And finally, the threading quiz. So you're going to make sure you know about those things, and the quiz previews, again, are right over here on the left. And finally, a unit exam. I think I took the unit exam out, so you won't have the unit exam for this. So that's all I have for this unit. Pretty straightforward. Really, it's just the write-up and the couple of quizzes for those of you who are not doing the programming part. So if we go up here to course home, week 8. So again, the programming parts are optional. So for those of you that are doing the programming parts, then you're welcome to do that. For the rest of you, that you have a couple of quizzes and the write-up. So that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching, everyone. I look forward to your work coming in. Bye.